Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be doing the It's All Relative tag. This is one I was tagged in by my good buddy, Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads. And this one's all kind of generally about like family with some interesting prompts as well, just with what or most of those are referencing to music or TV shows, that kind of thing. And so let's jump right into it. So the first one is Mamma Mia. So recommend a book with a mother character that is pivotal to the story. So, I mean, right off the bat, the very first thing that immediately comes to mind is the Sword of Kaigen. I don't have a physical copy of this because I read it on Kindle, but the pivotal character to the whole story is, of course, Misaki. It's by M.L. Wong. I don't think I actually said, but Misaki. And honestly, it was a viewpoint that you don't often see. I don't feel like there's a whole lot of books that really focus on a mother and their relationship with their children, but that book was just so good, despite I had some issues, especially with the ending of it. But I really enjoyed the book, and Misaki was such a compelling character, so really has to be my pick if we're talking about a mother featuring in fantasy, for sure. Number 2 is Papa Don't Preach, a book with a father character you either like or despise. So I decided to go with despise, and that has to be Aladon Amkrath from the Broken Empire trilogy, who is our main character, Yorick's father, and my gosh, he's a terrible person. You find that out very quickly, but there are additional flashbacks throughout the series that just really nail in there how terrible of a person he is. So I feel like that was a pretty easy answer going with Aladon here as well, for a very easy to despise father character. Number 3 is Brothers and Sisters, a book with an interesting sibling relationship. For this one, I decided to go with the Cycle of Fire trilogy by J.D. Wards. The first book in this is Storm Warden. I have the omnibus edition, though. I picked this specifically because I feel like there are definitely more books that have siblings. This has a really interesting relationship between siblings because one of our main characters, Tan, and her brother, Emian, are very immediately put at odds in this trilogy. And even though they're siblings, they end up on very different sides and going down very different pathways through kind of the machinations of the plot. And so really interesting and kind of a very different dynamic. And not something you necessarily get to see as much, where it's sister versus brother, that sort of thing. So I really liked how it was done here. This in general is, it was fresh in my mind too, because I was just talking to somebody on the Discord who's reading this. It's just such a unique premise of some really nice classic feeling fantasy with all kinds of twists and turns, and that is a lot more than meets the eye initially. So wanted to do that one. Number 4 is It's Been 84 Years. A book that is multi-generational or chronicles a character's whole life. So I struggled on this one a little bit. The first thing I figured I'd go with is Mistborn, because you have Era 1 and Era 2, and Era 2 is a couple hundred years later. So it's kind of like a new generation. You do specifically have people who are descended from characters in the first trilogy, so I figure that kind of works for the multi-generational thing. And then granted, in the next trilogy, or if it ends up being more than a trilogy for Mistborn, will be even further in the future, so I don't know if we'll specifically have descendants in those either. I figured that works generally, or my alternate answer for going for chronicling a whole life. I know it's not a book, and that's why neither one of these completely fit, because it's multiple books, but Realm of the Elderlings does start with Assassin's Apprentice here, with Fitz, who's I think 6 years old at the beginning, and then the last trilogy, I think he's like in his 60s or 70s, so definitely his whole life over the series. So maybe it doesn't technically count as being a specific book, but I honestly couldn't think of an answer of a specific book that was multiple generations or did the whole life. I'm sure I've read some like that, but I honestly couldn't think of any at the time. So that's what I went with. Number 5, You Complete Me, a book with an interesting marriage as a central element to the story. So I had to think about this one too, because I don't really pay a ton of attention to romance in books. There's a lot, though. I know a lot of series where there's like a marriage between nobles, and like one of them doesn't want to do it, or like it's something like that going on. But I decided once again I was trying to think of more interesting answers and do some lesser known books that aren't talked about as much here. So I went with the Tales of Durand series, and this is the first book in the Eye of Heaven by David Keck. This is like pretty much unheard of, is basically what I found in this series. Despite, like, it's got blurbs on the back from Jacqueline Carey, Steven Erikson, and David Drake. I don't know Diana Paxson, but there's also one from her too. So, like, it's got some pretty good blurbs, and I actually enjoyed this series quite a lot. This, though, where it's an interesting answer is because our main character, Durand, ends up basically getting entangled with a woman who he then finds out is actually married to his lord that he's following as a knight. And so that's kind of the most vague way I could say it. And it continues to be central, too, because there's a lot more to it. The marriage not necessarily being the most happy, and just kind of the struggles of trying to figure out what to do. So it's something that you do get quite a lot of throughout, and so I thought that was a good pick for that one as well. Number 6 is Picture It, Sicily. It's a book with an interesting elder character. Could be a grandparent, great-grandparent, etc. I didn't pick specifically a grandparent, but I did pick an elder character, and I had to go with it because just one of the things I've read with just a really, really great elder character, Legend by David Gemmell, because we're following Dress the Legend, who is in his like 60s or 70s in this first book, which takes place pretty late chronologically in the series that came later. But him as a retired hero coming back, and I really, really enjoyed this, and I really loved the idea of looking at the retired hero instead of the young hero. And I know there are books later on where you get to see some of his exploits as well, but starting here was such an interesting way to do it with Legend, and so I really enjoyed that different viewpoint. And it wasn't just even like, there's lots too where you get like, oh, the retired dragon slayer or something like that, comes back, where they, aren't so much of a hero anymore. This is Dress, who was like the greatest hero of the land, and he's coming back, and he's still very impressive, and he's trying to live up to his legend, basically, even though he's kind of not feeling it anymore and ready to be done, but he's doing what's needed, and just was really, really great way it was handled in that book. So number 7, and I agree this is a weird prompt for what it actually says, but Friends with Benefits is the prompt, and it's a book with found family or friends as family element. If we're talking found family, though, I absolutely have to go with John Gwynn's The Faithful and the Fallen. This is the first book, Malice, because found family is pretty common in a lot of fantasy books. I've read quite a lot of fantasy books with found family, but arguably some of the best I've read is in Faithful and the Fallen. It is a huge, huge part of the story with all of the characters. There's lots of different groups of different people, and their interactions with each other and their found families all throughout are one of the things that make this so enjoyable. So much found family in here, I had to go with it for that answer. Then we have I Think We're Alone Now, which once again, I commented this on Andrew's video, but I'm going to pretend, even though I could be wrong, I'm going to pretend that this is a reference to the original 60s song by Tommy James and the Shondells, and not the shopping mall Tiffany cover in the 80s. So this is a book with a character who was lost, left behind, or abandoned. Can also be a story with an orphaned or adopted character. So this also, I'm going a slightly different direction, but I went with the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy by Ted Williams. I actually should finish Two Green Tower, the last book, tonight, later tonight, but our main character, Simon, is an orphan and does live in the castle, but more so specifically than that element, it's just there are several times throughout the series where he ends up just on his own and feeling completely lost and abandoned. And those moments have just been done so well. Those moments where he's alone and kind of trying to just survive and stay sane. You get some in the first book and in all 3 of the books. There are multiple times throughout where things like that happen. It never feels quite repetitive or anything like that, but it's just really handled well. And so when I was thinking of just that feeling of alone, I immediately thought of Simon here from the Dragonbone Chair. All right, and then we have number 9, which is Fur Baby, a book where a pet or animal is a part of the family and or plays an important role in the book. So I tried to not repeat any answers, but come on, guys. We gotta go. Rommel the Elderlings. You can pick any of the Fitz books, really. Night Eyes. Night Eyes is my favorite animal companion. I love Night Eyes as a character so much. definitely part of the family. Definitely integral role with Fitz. Such a great character, and there's just, I can't think of any animal companion that beats out Nine Eyes. I honestly can't. So I have to go with that for that one part as well. So those are my answers for the It's All Relative tag. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoy it. Check the link in the description if you want to chat books or anything else, or if you don't have a channel and want to answer this tag or other tags. We actually have a tag channel there where just anybody in the Discord can answer tags. So it's really fun getting to see other people who aren't on BookTube still answer the tags and give their answers. Always really interesting to see as well. So check it out if you're interested. We would love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.